Hi, I'm Val from Quilty Pleasures, and I just wanted to share a few nifty notions that that we've been using and thought you might like to know about. We know a lot of you are sewing and finishing up projects during the pandemic and lockdown. Everybody's sewing. One of the things that you have to do to finish the stuff up is put your binding on, and this binding tool from Fons and Porter is one of our very favorite notions, but sometimes people don't quite understand how to use it, so I'm just going to give you a quick little lesson, and you'll find it makes your life a lot easier. So I've made a pretend quilt, and I have sewn my binding from the beginning, and I went around all of my corners, and now I'm at the end. Actually, I did that backwards. Now I'm at the end where I have to join those two pieces, and I don't want to do just a straight join because it looks very obvious, especially with prints, and it provides a lot of bulk when you're trying to sew through it. So the binding tool gives you a nice diagonal finish and is really easy to use. I'm going to show you how now. Alright, so I started putting my binding on, and I've left a bit of a tail here. I don't want to be crowded. I want lots of room so that I can manipulate my fabric. So when you're using the binding tool, leave yourself a tail. If you're working on a great big quilt, you know, a double or a queen, give yourself a good foot. You want enough room, because the weight of your quilt is going to drag if you're too tight and you don't have enough room to maneuver. So I've left my tail here. As I said, I've gone around all of my corners, and I end up and I've got extra binding here. So again, I'm going to stop well before I get to my starting piece of fabric. So you put your ending piece on top of your beginning piece. On your tool, there's a little arrow that you're going to put right along the edge of your binding, and it's pointing towards the last corner that you sewed. And you're going to flip your fabric over in the direction of the arrow. And then you just kind of scooch your tool over until, see where there's my beginning bit, you just line that up. On your tool, it also has measurements. I cut my binding at 2.5 inches, and so there's my 2.5 inch line, and that's where I'm going to cut. So I'm just going to take a pen and mark that. And then I'm going to be very brave, and this is where everybody gets scared. Don't be. I'm going to cut. And what that has done is it's given me a 2.5 inch overlap from my starting point. It's basic geometry. This is going to work. So I'm going to open my binding up, and be careful that you don't twist. You want to just keep it both going in the same direction. And I want to be able to do a diagonal join. So I'm taking my starting piece, flipping it over, and on my tool there's a diagonal line, and I'm putting the diagonal line with the corner at the corner, the line along the side of my binding strip again. And I'm using a friction pen because if I make a mistake, it'll iron out, and that's great because I do make mistakes. Okay, so I've made my line. I'm now going to place that over my end piece, and you can see why you need to leave a tail. This is actually even a little bit tight, and I'm going to pin it on the line. And I always do this and test it with 2 pins, because it's very easy to twist the binding and, whoops, there, I'm just pinning, and I'm avoiding that middle bit because it's going to get folded and I don't want the pins to get bent. So then I can test that that's how it's going to sew. And I know it fits. And then you can just sew along the line, trim off the excess, press it, or finger press it if you want. And then you will continue sewing your binding down and it will be nice and mitered and perfect. So that's the Fons and Porter binding tool. I hope you try it. I love it. I use it all the time, and sometimes you think, oh, we really don't need that. We can just eyeball it. Don't eyeball it. Use the tool. It makes it so much easier and so much more accurate, and I think you'll really appreciate that. So it's $14 well spent.